just reading State and Revolution. How are we doing? You have entered into a video by Maxine on the channel Thought Shop. Today, I want to talk about things. One thing that I always read from the American left is that North Korea is a monarchy and that it's Juche to blame. And that, more importantly, China is a capitalist state ran by a falsely named Communist Party. Now let's set this straight. The East is still red. It has been red since the 1950s, after the People's Republic of China won its war against the Kuomintang, followed in step by North Korea, Vietnam, and Laos. The East is still red. Now, how can I say China is red when they have McDonald's and Adidas and Nike and iPhones? Well, that's very simple. It's all down to theory and practice. After the Great Leap Forward and the mistake that was the Cultural Revolution, China saw for the first time a leader in Deng Xiaoping, who became chairman of the Chinese Communist Party in 1978, following the death of Mao and the arrest of the Gang of Four. Now, for context, Deng, who was a fervent revolutionary and fighter for the cause of the Communist Party of China, since his studying in France in 1924 when he joined the European Youth Branch of the CCP. In 1926, he went to the Soviet Union to study, where he lived under the NEP, or the New Economic Plan, a market-based economic system meant to bring the Soviet Union into the modern world. The Soviet Union was still a backwards nation with not a large proletarian base. Still mostly rural, mostly peasants. Deng Xiaoping then left the Soviet Union, though, a year later, and joined the Chinese Communist Party in China. Throughout the 50s to 70s, though, Deng was strongly criticized by Mao multiple times for being on the capitalist road. But never once was he actually removed from the Communist Party, like the other capitalist roaders. Now, after he took China from the radical Gang of Four, Deng had plans he wished to push forward, that being opening and reform, stating that there are no more peasants or landlords, no more workers or capitalists, but that China had to build the productive forces of society, for China has cleansed society of the capitalist and feudal elements. His goal was that to build up the productive forces. The productive forces being revolutionary thought and the building of a modern society with means of production. He had stated that socialism does not always have to be planned, same as capitalism does not always have to have markets. Pushing China towards reforms has allowed markets to flourish in China, and they have flourished for 45 years. Now, why is this important? Right? Let's talk about Mao Zedong thought and Deng Xiaoping theory. Under Deng Xiaoping theory, there is this set of ideas, right? That being the dictatorship of the proletariat and the building up towards socialism, towards communism, right? Chairman Mao had built up towards socialism and had created the dictatorship of the proletariat from the 1950s to the 1970s. And then after that, you had the phases of socialism, which leads from Marxist and Leninist theory. So, thus arguing that socialism, which is in it of itself a form of worker control of the means of production, and the dictatorship of the proletariat over the bourgeois, without the opening of China to the capitalist world via trade and business, such is also being done by Cuba and Vietnam, we would still see an impoverished and or broken nation. A nation without the modern conveniences of the world, or, even worse off, a nation ruled by the democratic bourgeois dictatorship. We see in China a standard of living that is much higher than here in the United States. A flourishing intellectual and Marxist-Leninist study. We see the boom and the richness of the whole of their society, in which everyone in China, from the rurals to the cities, have been lifted above the poverty line. And that the Chinese state-owned enterprises in the 5-year plan are just continuing to run strong. But so what? Right? So what? Why is this at all a red China? It's a red China because the state has control over all things that are done by both the capitalist and the markets. The workers have control over their government, and thus, therefore, the workers are dictating their bosses. This, in Deng Xiaoping theory, is called the primary phase of socialism. The workers have seized the state and now must create a culture of socialism and build up the productive forces. After this, there will be 2 more stages before we reach communism. That being, you have your dictatorship of the proletariat, your primary stage of socialism, your secondary stage of socialism, or intermediate stage of socialism, your mature socialism, and then your communism. And they will eventually be achieved. So, with this theory and practice, sometimes there are setbacks in the practice by either society or the economy or by the world system, whatever that be, pandemics or global economic crashes. But progress is steady, and we see a movement towards the intermediate stage of socialism. And we will discuss what that is at a different time in a different video. Hopefully, even with this short video, you have found that the East is still red. It is still red. And China is at the center point and is a pivotal area for this continuation of socialism across the world, and a goal to strive towards as socialists. Until next time, solidarity forever, and workers of the world, unite.